Claire's fingers locked around the wheelchair handles, her knuckles white against the metal. Ice cracked beneath them like gunshots. 15 feet below, the creek churned with chunks of ice sharp as broken glass. "Don't let go!" Mikey's voice broke into a sob. The rotted plank groaned. Claire's worn sneakers slid on frost. Her knee screamed where she'd already torn it open, blood soaking through her jeans. She pulled. The wheelchair didn't budge. Another crack. Deeper. Final. She threw her weight backward, small hands burning, muscles tearing. The chair lurched. Mikey gasped. They tumbled onto solid ground as the plank exploded downward, swallowed by rushing water. Mikey was shaking. Claire was shaking. But they were alive. "You saved me," he whispered. Footsteps pounded across frozen earth, heavy, adult, angry. Claire looked up into the face of a man who would change everything. Thomas Brennan had arrived. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. 2 weeks earlier, Thomas Brennan stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his mountain estate, watching snow blanket the world in silence. The December cold snap had descended on Aspen like a fist, temperatures plunging to 12 below zero. Outside, the first major snowfall transformed pine trees into ghost sentinels. Behind him, the mansion sprawled empty and ornate. Marble floors reflected nothing but his own haunted figure. He was 42, a billionaire who'd built empires in real estate and technology, yet the expensive suit hung looser on his frame than it had 2 years ago. Gray threaded through his temples now. He'd stopped caring about appearance the day Kate died. His phone buzzed. Another article. Another reminder. He scrolled past the headline about disabled children facing bullying, his jaw tightening. This was why Mikey stayed home. This was why the world couldn't touch him. Down the hall, Mikey's room door stood ajar. Thomas checked it compulsively now, 3 times every morning. Through the gap, he could see his 7-year-old son in the wheelchair, staring out his own window. The boy hadn't smiled in 8 months. Frank, the butler, kept a log. Mikey's room overflowed with toys still in boxes, books with uncracked spines. On the bedside table lay Kate's scarf, the one thing the child actually touched. Thomas had watched through security cameras as Mikey whispered to it at night. The physical therapy equipment gathered dust. Mikey refused it all now. Across town, in a 4th-floor walk-up with no elevator, 8-year-old Claire Morgan woke to her breath misting in the cold air. The radiator had been broken for 3 weeks. She could see the temperature reading on the old thermostat, 45 degrees. She dressed quickly, layering a sweater under her coat. The coat had fit 2 years ago. Now her wrists stuck out 4 inches past the sleeves. Her shoes had cardboard inserts where the soles had worn through. In the kitchen, she made herself breakfast from the last of the bread, spread thin with margarine. Her mother Maggie had already left for her first job at 5 that morning. Claire would be alone until 10 tonight. She packed her school lunch carefully, calculating. 1 sandwich, 1 apple. Had to last until dinner, which she'd make herself again. Before leaving, Claire touched the firefighter's badge in her coat pocket. Her father's. The metal was warm from her body heat. She whispered the same thing she did every morning. "Make me brave like you, Daddy." Outside, Claire could see the park from her window. Mikey could see the same park from his. Neither child knew that in 2 weeks, that park would bring them together and change everything forever. Word count 400. December 15th arrived with bitter cold and unexpected hope. For the first time in 8 months, Mikey asked to go outside. Thomas had been on a conference call when his son wheeled into the study. "Dad?" The voice was small, uncertain. "Can we go to the park?" Thomas froze mid-sentence with a Tokyo investor. Mikey never asked for anything anymore, never expressed wants. The psychologist had warned this silence was dangerous, but Thomas had believed safety mattered more than speech. The park? Thomas covered the phone's microphone. I've been watching the red squirrel from my window every day this week. Mikey's fingers twisted in his lap. I just want to see it up close, please? Thomas saw Kate in that moment, in the hopeful eyes, in the small rebellion against fear. He ended the call abruptly. Get your coat. Riverside Memorial Park spread along the frozen creek, its playground equipment dusted with snow. The temperature had dropped to 10 below, and the park sat nearly deserted. Thomas pushed Mikey's wheelchair along the salted path, one hand on his phone, already half distracted by another business crisis. Mikey pointed to the old wooden bridge that crossed the creek. There. The squirrel's nest is in that tree. The bridge had stood for 40 years, its boards weathered and graying. A faded sign warned of weight limits, but families crossed it daily. Thomas barely glanced at it as Mikey wheeled forward, eager for the first time in forever. Meanwhile, Claire hurried through the same park, taking her usual shortcut home. She'd just finished her shift babysitting the neighbor's twins for $5, money her mother didn't know about. In her pocket, along with the firefighter's badge, sat something else. A $500 bill she'd found that morning on the sidewalk near the grocery store. $500. 6 months of rent. Food for weeks. New shoes without cardboard. But it wasn't hers. She'd decided to take it to the police station after dinner. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. Doing right doesn't always feel good, baby, but it's still right. The grocery bag in her arms held day-old bread, 50% off. Claire's knee ached from the cold. She'd scraped it yesterday climbing the apartment stairs in the dark when the hallway light burnt out again. She was thinking about homework, about the spelling test tomorrow, when she heard the crack. The sound cut through the winter air like a rifle shot. Claire's head snapped up. On the bridge, a small figure in a wheelchair had rolled to the center. The boards beneath groaned ominously. Mikey heard it too. He stopped, confused. The red squirrel darted across the railing just ahead, and he reached out instinctively. The wheelchair shifted. The plank split. Wood splintered with a sound like breaking bones. The wheelchair tilted sickeningly toward the gap, toward the railing that was already crumbling from rot. Below, the creek rushed with ice chunks and freezing water, a 15-foot drop onto rocks. Mikey's hands flailed, searching for purchase. "Dad!" But Thomas stood 50 feet away, absorbed in his phone call, his back turned. Claire didn't think. Thinking was for people with time. She dropped the bread and ran. Her sneakers slipped on ice. Her thin coat flew open. The cold bit through her clothes, but she didn't feel it. She only saw a child about to die. She hit the bridge at full speed. The boards shuddered under her weight. Another crack echoed. Claire grabbed the wheelchair handles and pulled with strength she didn't know an 8-year-old body could produce. The wood gave way completely. The plank that had supported Mikey's weight crashed into the creek below. The railing splintered. For one horrible second, Claire felt them both sliding toward the void. Then her foot caught on solid board. She threw her weight backward, muscles screaming, hands burning on the cold metal. The wheelchair lurched away from the edge. They tumbled together onto firm ground just as the entire section of bridge collapsed into the churning water. Claire's knee struck exposed wood. Pain exploded. Blood soaked through her jeans immediately, hot against the freezing air. But Mikey was safe. They were both safe. The boy was shaking violently, tears streaming down his face. But through the tears, something else emerged, something Thomas hadn't seen in 8 months. Mikey smiled. "You saved me," he whispered, his voice filled with wonder and relief and the first real joy he'd felt since his mother died. Claire barely heard him. Her hands trembled. Her knee throbbed. But she smiled back, breathless. "You're okay. That's all that matters." Heavy footsteps pounded toward them. Claire looked up. The man approaching had fury written across every line of his face, and she didn't understand why. Word count 800. Thomas Brennan's world had just shattered, and all he could see was blood. Blood on a child's knee, blood on his son's coat sleeve, blood like the night Kate died, spreading across car upholstery while sirens wailed in the distance. The memory hit him like a physical blow, stealing his breath. He'd turned from his phone call to see Mikey in the arms of a stranger, a little girl he'd never seen before, her clothes threadbare and dirty, her hands on his son's wheelchair. His disabled, vulnerable, precious son being touched by someone he didn't know. Every threat letter he'd ever received flashed through his mind. Every ransom attempt. Every news story about wealthy families targeted through their children. The blogger who'd published that horrible article calling Mikey the broken heir, complete with photographs taken without permission. His blood ran cold, then hot with protective rage. "Get away from my son!" The words exploded from Thomas before conscious thought could temper them. His voice carried across the park like thunder, sharp enough to scatter the crows from nearby trees. Claire flinched as if struck. Her hands released the wheelchair immediately and she stumbled backward. The movement jarred her injured knee. Fresh blood welled through the torn denim. "Sir, Her voice was small, frightened. "The bridge was breaking. I just wanted to—" "Silence!" Thomas stormed forward, his expensive shoes splashing through the shallow puddle of melted snow. "What were you doing near him? Who sent you?" Claire's eyes went wide. "Who sent me? No one sent me. I was just— Daddy, no!" Mikey's voice cracked with desperation. "She helped me. The bridge was breaking." But Thomas wasn't listening, couldn't listen. All he could process was threat, danger, his son exposed and vulnerable. He grabbed the wheelchair handles, yanking it away from Claire so roughly that Mikey cried out, "Did someone pay you to approach my son?" Thomas's voice had gone cold now, lethal. He loomed over Claire, a grown man towering over an 8-year-old child. "What's your angle? Is this some kind of setup for a lawsuit? A ransom scheme?" I don't understand." Claire's voice shook. She tried again to explain, holding up her bleeding knee as evidence. "Sir, please, he was going to fall into the creek. The wood broke. I saw it happening and I just—" "You have no right to touch him." Thomas cut her off, his face flushed red with anger and fear he couldn't distinguish from each other. "Do you understand me? No right." People had started to gather. An elderly woman with a small dog stopped on the path, her hand reaching for her phone. Two parents with children at the playground turned to watch, their expressions shifting from curiosity to concern. Someone whispered, "Isn't that Thomas Brennan? The billionaire?" Another voice, louder, "What's he doing yelling at a little girl?" Thomas felt the eyes on him, the judgment, and it only fueled his anger. This was exactly what he'd feared. Mikey being seen, being photographed, being made into a spectacle again. "Daddy, stop it!" Mikey was crying now, full sobs that shook his small frame. "She saved me. Why are you being so mean?" Thomas gripped the wheelchair tighter, his knuckles white. "You don't understand, Mikey. You don't know what people—" "She's nice." Mikey twisted in his chair, reaching back toward Claire with desperate hands. "She's nice, and you're being horrible." Claire stood frozen, her face pale except for 2 spots of red on her cheeks. Blood dripped from her knee onto the snow, bright crimson against white. Her grocery bag lay forgotten in the creek, bread floating away on the current. Her coat hung open, revealing the too small sweater beneath, the clothing that marked her as different, as other, as not their kind. She tried one last time, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry if I scared you. I didn't mean to cause trouble. I just didn't want him to get hurt." "Go home." Thomas pointed toward the park entrance, his hand shaking with adrenaline. "Find your parents and stay away from here. If you come near my son again, I'll call the police. Do you understand?" The threat hung in the cold air, ugly and unmistakable. Claire's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. She straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin with a dignity that seemed impossibly old for her age. "Yes, sir. I understand." She turned and walked away, limping on her injured leg. Her thin coat offered no protection against the wind that had picked up, cutting through the park with Arctic cruelty. She didn't look back. Mikey's cries intensified. "No! Claire! Don't go!" He tried to wheel the chair himself, to follow her, but Thomas held it firm. "We're leaving." Thomas's voice was flat, final. He pushed the wheelchair toward their car, parked at the curb. "I hate you," Mikey sobbed. "She saved my life and you were mean to her. I hate you, Daddy." The words should have hurt. Thomas told himself they would hurt later. Right now he could only focus on getting Mikey into the car, getting him home, getting him safe behind walls and gates and security systems that would keep the world out. As Thomas lifted his son from the wheelchair, he caught a glimpse of the elderly woman with the dog. She was definitely filming now, her phone aimed directly at them. Her expression held something Thomas hadn't seen directed at him in years: disgust. Let her post it, he thought bitterly. Let them all judge. They didn't know what it was like to lose everything in one night of blood and sirens. They didn't understand that protection meant isolation, that love meant control. The car door slammed. Mikey's sobs filled the leather interior, and Thomas drove them home to their fortress, telling himself he'd done the right thing, even as his son's cries echoed in his ears all the way up the mountain. Word count: 1,000. The Brennan estate sat like a mausoleum on the mountainside that evening, all marble and silence. Thomas carried Mikey through the towering front doors, past crystal chandeliers that cast fractured light across walls decorated with expensive art neither of them looked at anymore. "I don't want dinner," Mikey said, his voice hoarse from crying. It was the first thing he'd spoken since they'd left the park. "You need to eat." Thomas set him carefully in the wheelchair, his hands gentle despite the rigidity in his spine. "I'm not hungry." Thomas recognized the tone. It was the same flat affect that had characterized the past 8 months, the emotional shutdown that had replaced his son's former vibrancy. He'd hoped the park visit might help. Instead, he'd made everything worse. "Mikey." "She saved my life." Mikey's eyes, red-rimmed and swollen, fixed on his father with an intensity that made Thomas want to look away. "The bridge broke. I was going to fall. She pulled me back." "And you yelled at her?" "I was protecting you." "From what?" The question came out raw, almost a shout. "From someone being nice to me? From having a friend? She was a stranger. You don't know." "I don't know anything." Mikey's small fists pounded the armrests of his wheelchair. "I don't go anywhere. I don't see anyone. I'm in prison here, and you're the warden." The words landed like physical blows. Thomas opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" Mikey's voice broke. "Mom died 2 years ago, Dad. 2 years. And you've been keeping me locked up ever since, like I'm going to die too if I breathe outside air." Thomas felt his chest constrict. "Your mother died because I couldn't protect her. I won't fail you too. You're already failing me." Mikey wheeled himself toward the stairs, toward the elevator that would take him to his room. "You just don't see it." The elevator doors closed. Thomas stood alone in the foyer, surrounded by wealth that suddenly felt like ash. Frank appeared from the shadows, the elderly butler's face creased with concern. "Sir, might I suggest—" "Not now, Frank." "With respect, sir, the boy needs—" "I said not now." Frank withdrew with a slight bow, but his eyes held reproach that Thomas felt like a weight on his shoulders. Upstairs, Mikey locked his bedroom door and wheeled to the window. The park was visible in the distance, a smudge of darkness against the snow. He pressed his forehead against the cold glass and whispered to the emptiness, "I'm sorry, Claire. I'm sorry he was so mean." Across town, Claire climbed 4 flights of stairs on her injured leg, each step sending jolts of pain through her knee. The apartment was dark and cold when she entered. Maggie wouldn't be home for hours yet. Claire went to the bathroom and examined her knee under the flickering fluorescent light. The cut was deep, still bleeding sluggishly. She washed it with hydrogen peroxide from the nearly empty bottle, biting her lip against the sting. There were only 2 bandages left in the box. She couldn't waste them. Instead, she took a clean sock from her drawer, the mate to one with a hole too big to wear, and wrapped it around her knee. It wasn't ideal, but it would do. She made herself a dinner of crackers and the end of a jar of peanut butter, eating standing up at the kitchen counter. Her hands shook slightly. She told herself it was from the cold, not from the memory of a grown man's rage directed at her for trying to help. The $500 bill still sat in her coat pocket. She'd forgotten all about it in the chaos of the bridge, the rescue, the confrontation. Now she took it out and smoothed it on the counter. This could fix so much. The radiator, new shoes, groceries for a month. But it still wasn't hers. Claire folded it carefully and placed it in an envelope. Tomorrow, after school, she'd take it to the police station as planned. Her father's voice echoed in her mind. "Character is what you do when no one's watching, baby girl." When Maggie finally came home at 10:15, exhausted from her shift at the restaurant, she found Claire already in bed. The makeshift bandage on her daughter's knee stopped her in the doorway. "Claire?" She sat on the edge of the narrow bed. "Baby, what happened?" Claire had planned to minimize it, to spare her mother the worry. But when Maggie's work-roughened hand touched her hair gently, the story spilled out. The bridge, the boy in the wheelchair, the rescue, the man's fury. Maggie's face cycled through shock, pride, and anger. "He yelled at you after you saved his son?" "I think he was scared, Mama. The boy said his mom died. Maybe he's just afraid." Maggie pulled her daughter close. "Fear doesn't excuse cruelty, sweetheart. But I'm so proud of you." So proud I could burst. "I didn't do anything special. I just didn't want him to fall. That's what makes it special." Maggie kissed the top of Claire's head. "You have your daddy's heart. He'd be proud too." They prayed together before sleep, as they did every night. Claire added a new prayer. "Please help the boy be okay, and please help his dad not be so scared anymore." December 16th dawned gray and bitter. Mikey refused breakfast. He refused to speak. He sat by his window and stared out at nothing, his small body radiating misery. Thomas watched from the doorway, his coffee growing cold in his hand. He'd barely slept, haunted by the look on Claire's face when he'd threatened her. The fear in her eyes, the dignity in her straight spine as she'd limped away. He'd replayed the scene 100 times in his head, trying to justify his actions. She'd been a stranger. He'd been protecting Mikey. It was reasonable to be cautious. But the footage he'd found online told a different story. Mrs. Ruth Williams, a 78-year-old neighbor, had posted a video to the local Facebook community group. Thomas's assistant had alerted him to it at 7 that morning. By 9, it had 300 shares. The video showed everything. Claire running onto the bridge, the wood breaking, her pulling Mikey to safety, the blood on her knee, and then Thomas storming over, yelling accusations at a child who'd just saved his son's life. The comments were brutal. Billionaire berates hero girl. This is disgusting. That child saved his son. Someone find this little girl. She deserves recognition, not threats. Typical rich person, thinks everyone's out to get them. But there were others too. He was protecting his disabled child. Stranger danger is real. You don't know the whole story. Maybe the girl was setting it up. The debate raged online while Thomas sat in his study, staring at the frozen frame of Claire's face as he yelled at her. He looked like a monster. He felt like one. His phone buzzed. His PR team asking how to handle it. His lawyer asking if he wanted to pursue action against the person who'd posted the video. His assistant flagging the growing media interest. Thomas ignored them all. He was watching a different video now, one that had surfaced in the Reddit thread about the incident. Security footage from a grocery store, time-stamped that morning. A little girl in a too-small coat carefully counting change to buy day-old bread, the cashier's sympathetic smile, the girl's polite, "Thank you," before leaving. Someone had recognized Claire from Mrs. Ruth's video and shared this one. The caption read, "This is the suspicious girl the billionaire accused. She's buying discount bread." Does this look like a scammer to you? Thomas closed his laptop. He couldn't look anymore. Claire, meanwhile, had no idea she was becoming an internet sensation. She had no social media accounts, no smartphone, no computer at home. She went to school, sat through her classes trying not to wince every time her knee bent, and tried to forget the way that man had looked at her like she was something dirty. After school, she walked to her babysitting job, watching 3-year-old twins for Mrs. Chen while their mother worked. The $5 she earned went into her pocket with the $500 bill she still needed to turn in. But on her way to the police station, Claire made a detour. She found herself standing outside the tall iron gates of the Brennan estate. She'd looked up the address in the phone book at the library, pretending she needed it for a school project. The house loomed on the hillside, enormous and intimidating. Claire had brought something with her. A letter, written on notebook paper in her careful 8-year-old handwriting. Dear Mikey, I hope you're okay. I hope your knee doesn't hurt anymore. I saw the red squirrel at the park today. It was eating a pine cone. I thought you would like to know. I'm sorry if I made your dad angry. I didn't mean to. I just didn't want you to fall. If you ever want to play, I'm usually at the park after 3 p.m. I'll wait for you. Your friend, Claire. She approached the intercom at the gate. A security guard's voice crackled through. Can I help you? Claire held up the letter to the camera. Please, sir, this is for Mikey, the boy in the wheelchair. Can you give it to him? There was a long pause. The guard, Officer Martinez, stared at his monitor. He recognized her from the video that had gone viral in the security staff's group chat. The girl his boss had yelled at. The girl who'd saved the boss's kid. Martinez was 57, a grandfather to a little girl about Claire's age. Looking at this child, shivering in the cold with a letter clutched in her small hands, made his chest ache. Kid, you can't be here. Mr. Brennan's orders were clear. Please. Claire's voice was small but determined. I just want him to know I'm not mad. That I hope he's okay. Martinez looked at the letter, at the girl's hopeful face, at the bandage visible on her knee beneath her jeans. He thought about his own granddaughter and what he'd want someone to do for her. I'll take it, he said, making a decision that could cost him his job. But then you need to go home. Understand, it's not safe for you to be here. Not safe? Claire looked confused. Why not? How could he explain that her kindness was seen as a threat? That wealth built walls not just around property but around hearts. Just trust me, kiddo. Go home. Claire handed over the letter and walked away, limping slightly. Martinez watched her disappear down the mountain road, then looked at the envelope in his hand. He should give it to Mr. Brennan. That was protocol. Instead, he slipped it into his pocket and made a call to Frank, the head butler. They'd worked together for 15 years. Frank would know what to do. Inside the mansion, Mikey hadn't moved from his window all day. He'd refused lunch, refused to see his tutor, refused everything except sitting and staring at the park in the distance, remembering Claire's smile when she'd said, "You're okay. That's all that matters." No one had said something like that to him since his mom died. No one had looked at him like he mattered more than his wheelchair, more than his limitations, more than the tragedy that defined him. Frank knocked softly and entered without waiting for permission. "Master Mikey, I have something for you." He produced the letter, slightly crumpled, from Martinez's pocket. Mikey's hands shook as he opened it. He read it once, twice, 3 times, his eyes filled with tears. "She came here?" His voice was rough with emotion. "She came here after what Dad did?" "She did." Frank's own voice was thick. "She wanted you to know she's not angry." Mikey clutched the letter to his chest. For the first time in 8 months, something like hope flickered in his eyes. "I want to write back. Can you help me?" "Of course, sir." They spent an hour composing a response. Mikey's handwriting was shaky from disuse, but he insisted on writing it himself. "Dear Claire, thank you for saving me. Thank you for not being mad. My dad was wrong to yell. I'm sorry. I can't come to the park. Dad won't let me. But I look out my window and I think about you. You're the bravest person I ever met. Your friend, Mikey, P.S. I miss my mom. You made me feel less sad. Thank you." Frank promised to get the letter to Martinez to deliver. But before he could leave, the door opened and Thomas stood there, his face unreadable. "What's going on?" Mikey held the letter protectively. "Claire wrote to me. I'm writing back." Thomas saw the envelope in Frank's hand, saw the hope on his son's face, and felt something crack inside his chest. "Let me see." "No. Mikey. You'll just throw it away. You'll say she's dangerous or she wants something from us." Mikey's voice rose. "But she doesn't want anything, Dad. She just wanted me to not fall. And now she wants to be my friend, that's all." Thomas looked at his son, really looked at him, saw the spark that had been missing for months, saw something beyond the grief and the silence and the shutdown. He saw life. "I won't throw it away," Thomas heard himself say. "I promise." Mikey hesitated, then handed over Claire's letter. Thomas read it slowly. The careful handwriting, the concern for Mikey's well-being, the simple offer of friendship. No mention of money, status, or anything else. Just, "I'll wait for you." His throat tightened. He'd accused this child of ulterior motives. He'd threatened her, and she'd responded with kindness. "She's 8 years old," Frank said quietly. "Just a little girl who did something brave, and you terrified her, sir." Thomas closed his eyes. "I know." "Do you?" Frank's voice held an edge Thomas had never heard before. "Because I've served your family for 30 years. Your father taught me that loyalty means speaking truth, not just following orders. So here's the truth. That girl is the best thing that's happened to this house in 2 years, and you drove her away. Frank, fire me if you must, but someone needs to tell you that you're so busy protecting Master Mikey from the world, you're protecting him from living, just like your wife warned you about." The words hung in the air like accusation and plea. Thomas looked at his son, at the letter, at the butler who'd been more of a father figure than employee. He thought about Kate, about her final whispered words, "Let him live." "Give Martinez the letter," Thomas said finally. "Let him deliver it to Claire." Mikey's face transformed. "Really? Really?" It wasn't much. It wasn't nearly enough, but it was a start. Word count, 2,500. The letter exchange should have been the beginning of healing. Instead, it became the spark that ignited Thomas Brennan's deepest fears into an inferno. December 19th arrived with news that shattered the fragile peace. Dr. Sarah Chen, Mikey's pediatrician, made an emergency house call after reviewing his latest blood work. She found Thomas in his study, surrounded by monitors displaying security footage of the estate's perimeter. "Mr. Brennan, we need to talk about Mikey." Dr. Chen was 40, no nonsense, and one of the few people Thomas actually listened to. "He's lost 4 pounds in the last week." Thomas looked up sharply. 4 pounds? "He's refusing meals again. Frank says he's barely touched food since the incident at the park." She set her tablet on his desk, showing charts that meant nothing to Thomas but clearly alarmed her. "This isn't just picky eating. This is a child shutting down." He seemed better yesterday. After the girl's letter, "One letter doesn't undo trauma, Mr. Brennan. Mikey is showing signs of severe depression. The isolation, the lack of peer interaction, the constant hovering, it's manifesting physically now." Dr. Chen leaned forward. "I'm recommending immediate psychiatric evaluation. If this continues, we're looking at hospitalization for failure to thrive." The words hit Thomas like ice water. Hospitalization? Children need more than safety and food. They need connection, purpose, hope. Dr. Chen's voice softened slightly. "I know you're trying to protect him, but protection that prevents living isn't protection. It's suffocation." After she left, Thomas sat in silence, staring at the security monitors. Protecting Mikey was all he had left. If he failed at that, what was he? His phone buzzed. Another alert from his PR team. The bridge video had gone viral nationally now, picked up by major news outlets. Billionaire confronts child hero ran on 3 cable news networks. His company's stock had dipped 2 points on the negative publicity. Thomas didn't care about the stock, but he cared about the exposure, about Mikey being in the news again, about the world's eyes on his vulnerable son. He made a decision that would haunt him. That evening, Thomas called an exclusive boarding school in Switzerland. The institute specialized in children with disabilities, offered world-class medical care, complete privacy, and education that would prepare Mikey for whatever future his condition allowed. It was perfect. It was safe. It was thousands of miles from parks with broken bridges and little girls who complicated everything. "I'd like to inquire about enrollment," Thomas said into the phone, his voice steady despite the churning in his gut. As he discussed logistics, he didn't notice Frank standing in the doorway, his elderly face stricken with horror. Meanwhile, Claire had established a routine. Every day after school and babysitting, she walked to the Brennan estate gates and left a letter with Officer Martinez. She never asked for anything, never mentioned the incident, just wrote about her day, asked about Mikey's, and signed each one, "Your friend." December 22nd's letter mentioned Christmas approaching. "Dear Mikey, only 3 days until Christmas. We're making paper snowflakes at our apartment because we can't afford decorations this year. Mom says it's okay because we have each other. I made one for you. It's shaped like a red squirrel, or I tried. It looks more like a blob with a tail. I'm leaving it with this letter. I hope it makes you smile. What do you want for Christmas? I want my mom to not have to work so hard, and I want you to be happy. Your friend, Claire." The snowflake was crude, cut from notebook paper with child-safe scissors, but made with such care that Martinez felt his throat tighten when he saw it. He'd been delivering Claire's letters to Frank, who gave them to Mikey. and he'd been taking Mikey's responses back to Claire. It was against protocol. It could cost him his job. But Martinez had a granddaughter who died from leukemia 2 years ago, and looking at Claire reminded him painfully of Emma. The same dark hair, the same brave eyes. He couldn't let another child suffer if he had the power to help. That night, Mikey read Claire's letter 17 times. He kept the snowflake on his nightstand next to his mother's scarf. It was the first decoration in his room since Kate died. He wrote back immediately, "Dear Claire, I love the snowflake. It's perfect. You're really good at making things. For Christmas, I want to see you again. Just once. But Dad won't let me go to the park anymore. I'm scared he's going to send me away. I heard him on the phone talking about schools in other countries. What if I never see you again? Please don't stop writing. Your letters are the only good thing in my life. Your friend, Mikey P.S. I want the same thing as you, for your mom to not work so hard. You deserve good things." The letter reached Claire on December 23rd. She read the part about Thomas sending Mikey away and felt her chest constrict with worry. That evening she did something she'd never done before. She counted out her babysitting money, $63 saved over 3 months, and walked to the police station. She found Sergeant Mike at the front desk, the same officer she'd turned the $500 bill into. "Excuse me, sir?" Claire's voice was small in the echoing station. "Remember me? I brought you money I found." Sergeant Mike smiled. "Sure do, kid. You're famous now. That video's everywhere. What can I do for you?" Claire set her $63 on the counter. "Can this buy a lawyer?" The sergeant's smile faded. "A lawyer? Honey, what's wrong?" "My friend's dad wants to send him away, to another country, but my friend doesn't want to go. He wants to stay here." Claire's words tumbled out in a rush. "Can a kid hire a lawyer to not be sent away? Is there a law?" Sergeant Mike came around the counter and knelt down. "Sweetheart, it's complicated. Parents have rights to make decisions for their kids, unless there's abuse or what if the kid wants to die if he gets sent away?" Claire's voice dropped to a whisper. "What if he told me he'd rather jump off his balcony than go to a school in Switzerland?" The sergeant's face went pale. "Did he actually say that?" Claire nodded miserably. She pulled out Mikey's letters, showing the progression from hopeful to desperate. The most recent one had a line she'd read with horror. "Sometimes I think about my mom and wonder if dying would mean I could see her again. I need to report this." Sergeant Mike stood, his hand reaching for his radio. "No!" Claire grabbed his arm. "Please don't. You'll make it worse. His dad will think I'm causing trouble and he'll definitely send Mikey away then. Claire, if a child is expressing suicidal thoughts, just give me time, please. Let me try to talk to his dad one more time. If it doesn't work, then you can call." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "I'm scared that if the police come, Mikey's dad will just protect him harder, lock him up tighter. He's already so alone." Sergeant Mike looked at this 8-year-old child trying to save another child's life with nothing but letters and hope, and made a decision that violated protocol but honored something deeper. "You have until December 26th. 3 days. If this isn't resolved by then, I'm calling Child Protective Services myself." Claire nodded, took back her $63, and left with a plan forming in her mind. December 24th, Christmas Eve, arrived with fresh snow and fresh tragedy. Thomas was finalizing arrangements with the Swiss school when he heard a crash from upstairs. He ran to find Mikey on the floor beside his wheelchair, surrounded by shattered glass from the mirror he'd thrown against the wall. "I won't go!" Mikey screamed. "You can't make me! How did you—" Thomas saw the boarding school brochure in Mikey's hand. Frank must have left it somewhere visible. "Mikey, let me explain. I don't want your explanations. I want my life back. I want my friend." Mikey's face was red, streaked with tears and snot, raw with an anguish that made him look ancient. "Mom would hate what you've become." The word struck Thomas like a physical blow. "Don't." "She told me before she died. She made me promise." Mikey's voice cracked. "She said, 'Don't let Daddy lock you away because he's scared. Promise me you'll live.' And I promised her, Dad. I promised Mom I'd live. And then you built this prison and called it protection." Thomas felt the floor tilt beneath him. "Your mother never—" "She knew you'd do this," Mikey sobbed. "She knew you'd let fear win. That's why she made me promise. And I've been breaking my promise for 2 years because I was too sad and too weak. But Claire made me want to keep it again. And now you're taking her away too." Frank appeared in the doorway. "Sir, perhaps we should—" "Everyone out," Thomas said quietly. "Leave us." When they were alone, Thomas carefully lifted his son from the floor, ignoring the glass, and held him while Mikey cried with the force of 2 years of grief finally breaking free. "I miss her," Mikey wept. "I miss Mom so much. And I'm so tired of being sad and alone. Claire makes me feel less alone." "Why is that wrong? Why is wanting one friend wrong?" Thomas held his son and had no answer, because the truth was settling over him like suffocating weight. Mikey was right. Kate had warned him. Dr. Chen had warned him. Frank had warned him. Even an 8-year-old girl had shown him through her persistent kindness. He was the problem, not the world, not Claire. Him. Later that night, after Mikey finally cried himself to sleep, Thomas did something he'd avoided for 2 years. He went to Kate's room. Dust covered everything like snow. Her jewelry still lay on the dresser. Her reading glasses still marked her place in a book she'd never finish. The room smelled faintly of her perfume, or maybe that was his imagination. On the nightstand, he found her diary. Thomas had never been able to read it before. The grief was too fresh, too raw. But tonight, with his son's words echoing in his ears, he forced himself to open it. The last entry was dated November 10th, 1 week before the accident. "Tom is suffocating Mikey with love. I know he means well, but he's teaching our son to fear life instead of embrace it. Tomorrow I'm taking Mikey to the park, whether Tom likes it or not. He needs to learn that scraped knees heal, but missed opportunities scar forever. I need to find a way to make Tom understand. Our son needs to live, not just be kept safe." The next page held something Thomas had never seen. A letter addressed to him in Kate's handwriting. "My darling Tom, if you're reading this, something went wrong. I'm gone. And knowing you, you're probably building walls around Mikey to keep the pain out. Don't. I love you for wanting to protect our boy. But protection without freedom is just another kind of death. Promise me. Promise that you'll let Mikey live. Let him scrape his knees. Let him make friends. Let him be scared and brave and foolish and joyful. The world will hurt him sometimes. That's life. But hiding from life isn't living, it's just slowly dying while your heart still beats. Love him by trusting him. Trust him by letting him go. Promise me, Tom. Please. Let our son live. Forever yours, Kate." Thomas read it 3 times, then folded forward over the diary and wept for the first time since the funeral. Deep, body-racking sobs that came from a place he'd locked away for 2 years. He'd broken his promise to Kate. He'd been breaking it every day. And an 8-year-old girl in a too-small coat had been trying to help him fix it, while he'd responded with threats and cruelty. At 4 in the morning on Christmas Day, Thomas Brennan made a decision. He showered, shaved for the first time in days, dressed in clean clothes, and walked to his car. Frank met him in the driveway. "Sir, where are you going at this hour?" "To do what I should have done 2 weeks ago." Thomas's voice was rough but steady. "I'm going to apologize." He drove down the mountain through fresh snow, toward Pinewood Apartments, toward a little girl who'd shown him what real courage looked like. It was time to stop being afraid. Word count, 1,800. Thomas Brennan stood outside apartment 4C at 6:15 on Christmas morning, his hand raised to knock, paralyzed by the weight of what he was about to do. Through the thin door, he could hear movement, someone getting ready for work even on Christmas Day. He knocked. Maggie Morgan opened the door in her restaurant uniform, exhaustion carved into every line of her face. Recognition flashed across her features, followed immediately by protective anger. "Mr. Brennan!" Her voice was ice. "It's Christmas morning. What do you want?" "I came to apologize." Thomas's voice cracked on the last word. "To Claire, to you, for everything." Maggie's eyes narrowed. "Because the video went viral? Because your PR team told you to? Because my son tried to kill himself last night?" The words hung in the cold hallway. Maggie's anger drained, replaced by horror. "What?" "He didn't succeed. But he tried." Thomas's hands shook. "Because I was going to send him away to boarding school. Because I've been so busy protecting him from the world that I was killing him myself. And your daughter." His voice broke completely. "Your daughter has been the only light in his life for 2 weeks, and I treated her like a criminal for saving him." Behind Maggie, Claire appeared in pajamas decorated with faded cartoon characters, her dark hair tangled from sleep. She saw Thomas and instinctively stepped back, fear flickering across her face. The sight of that fear he'd put there, broke something in Thomas that all the therapy and business failures and public humiliation never had. He dropped to his knees on the hallway floor, bringing himself to eye level with an 8-year-old child. "Claire, I owe you the biggest apology of my life." Tears streamed down his face, unashamed. "You saved my son's life. You showed him kindness when he'd forgotten what kindness felt like. And I responded by screaming at you, threatening you, treating you like you were dangerous when you're the bravest person I've ever met." Claire stared at him, silent. "I was wrong, completely, terribly wrong. I let my fear turn me into someone my wife would be ashamed of, someone I'm ashamed of." Thomas's voice shook. "I can't take back what I said to you, but I'm begging you, please forgive me, and please, if you're willing, please come see Mikey. He needs you, more than I've ever seen anyone need anything." Maggie's hand rested on Claire's shoulder, protective but not pulling her away. "Baby, it's your choice." Claire looked at Thomas for a long moment. This man had terrified her, had made her feel small and worthless and dirty. Every instinct told her to slam the door, to protect herself from being hurt again. But then she thought about Mikey's letters, the desperation in his words, the loneliness bleeding through every sentence. "Is he okay?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Mikey, is he okay?" Thomas's face crumpled. "No, he's not okay. He's been refusing food, having nightmares, talking about wanting to die. The doctors say he's depressed, severely. But yesterday, when I tried to take away even the hope of seeing you again, he couldn't finish." Claire made her decision. "I'll come. But you have to promise you won't yell at me again." "I promise. I swear on my wife's grave I will never raise my voice to you again. And you have to promise Mikey can stay here, not go to boarding school." Thomas nodded. "I already canceled it. He's staying home. And he can come to the park, to make friends, to be a normal kid." "Yes, all of it. Yes." Claire looked up at her mother. Maggie's eyes were wet, her expression a complex mixture of pain and pride and fear for her daughter's tender heart. "What do you think, Mama?" Maggie knelt down beside Claire. "I think you have the biggest heart of anyone I've ever known. I think your daddy would be so proud of you, and I think that little boy needs you." She turned to Thomas. "But if you hurt my daughter again, if you ever make her feel less than the miracle she is, there's not enough money in the world to protect you from me. Understood?" "Understood." Thomas stood. "I'll drive you both. Please." The Tesla's heated seats were a revelation to Claire, who'd never experienced such warmth in winter. She pressed her face to the window as they climbed the mountain, watching the sunrise paint the snow gold and pink. "Mr. Brennan?" Her voice was small in the expensive car. "Call me Tom, please." "Tom, did Mikey really try to—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Thomas's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He was measuring the distance from his balcony to the ground. Frank found the calculations in his notebook. And a note that said, "Maybe Mom is waiting for me." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "That's the saddest thing I ever heard." "I know. He can't die. He's my best friend." The simple declaration hit Thomas like a hammer. His son had never called anyone his best friend, never had anyone call him that in return. And this child, who had every reason to hate them both, claimed Mikey with fierce certainty. "He's lucky to have you," Thomas said quietly. They pulled up to the estate just as the sun crested the mountains. Frank opened the door, his face transforming when he saw Claire. "Miss Claire, thank God." "Where is he?" Claire was already moving toward the stairs. "His room. But miss, you should know, he's very fragile right now." Claire nodded and ran up the sweeping staircase, her injured knee barely slowing her. Thomas and Maggie followed at a distance. At Mikey's door, Claire paused. She could hear crying from inside, soft, hopeless sounds that made her chest ache. She knocked gently. "Go away." Mikey's voice was raw. "I don't want breakfast. I don't want the doctor. I just want—" "You want me to go away?" Claire pushed the door open. "That's too bad, because I just climbed a mountain to see you." Mikey's head whipped around from where he sat by the window. His face was pale, his eyes red and swollen. He looked like he'd aged a decade in 2 weeks. "Claire?" He whispered her name like a prayer. "Hi, Mikey. You're really here. This isn't a dream?" Claire crossed the room and knelt beside his wheelchair. "I'm really here, and I brought you something." She pulled from her pocket a crudely wrapped package, newspaper comics tied with yarn. Inside was a small wooden carving, rough but recognizable as a red squirrel. The paint was chipped. It was clearly second-hand. "I found it at the thrift store. It cost $2. I know it's not fancy like your stuff, but—" Mikey grabbed her in a hug so fierce it nearly knocked her over. He sobbed into her shoulder, his whole body shaking with the force of emotion too big for his small frame. "I thought I'd never see you again. I thought Dad sent you away forever. I thought I was going to have to die to escape." Claire held him tight, her own tears falling. "You can't die, Mikey. You're my best friend. Best friends don't leave each other. Promise?" "I promise. And I never break promises." From the doorway, Thomas watched his son cling to this little girl like she was the only thing keeping him tethered to earth, which he realized with devastating clarity she might be. Maggie stood beside him, tears streaming down her face. "That's my baby," she whispered, "saving lives with nothing but love." Thomas pulled out his phone and called Dr. Chen. "He's eating," he said when she answered. "Claire's here. He's already asking for breakfast." Through the phone he could hear the doctor's relieved exhale. Keep her there, Mr. Brennan. That girl is better than any medication I could prescribe. In Mikey's room, Claire had convinced him to come downstairs for Christmas breakfast. As she pushed his wheelchair toward the door, Mikey clutched the wooden squirrel in one hand and her hand in the other. "Claire, will you stay for Christmas?" She looked back at her mother, who nodded. "Yeah, Mikey, I'll stay." For the first time in 2 years, the Brennan mansion filled with the sound of children's laughter. It echoed off marble floors and crystal chandeliers, bringing life to rooms that had become a mausoleum. Thomas stood in the kitchen doorway, watching Claire and Mikey make pancakes with Frank's patient assistance. Flour covered the counter, the floor, both children. It was messy and chaotic and absolutely perfect. Maggie appeared beside him. "Mr. Brennan, we need to talk about boundaries, about what this means going forward." "You're right." Thomas turned to face her. "But first, I need to ask you something. Your work schedule, 3 jobs, barely making rent. What if I could offer you one job that paid enough for both of you to live comfortably?" Maggie's face hardened. "I don't want charity." "It's not charity. It's employment. I need an estate manager, someone to oversee staff, manage household operations, coordinate Mikey's medical care and therapy appointments. It's a real job with real responsibilities. $75,000 a year, health insurance, and living quarters in the guest wing if you want them." "Why?" "Because my son needs Claire in his life, and Claire needs her mother. This way, you can actually be there for her instead of working yourself to death." Thomas met her eyes. "I'm not trying to buy forgiveness or friendship. I'm trying to make amends. And, practically speaking, you'd be doing me a favor. This house has been falling apart since Kate died because I've been too lost to manage it." Maggie studied him for a long moment. "I need to think about it, of course. Take all the time you need." From the kitchen, Claire's voice rang out. "Mikey, no! That's not how you flip pancakes!" Followed by Mikey's laughter and the sound of something hitting the floor. Both adults smiled despite themselves. "She's really something, your daughter," Thomas said quietly. "She's everything," Maggie replied. "She's all I have." "Then I understand why you're cautious. I'd be the same way." Thomas paused. "For what it's worth, I meant what I said. I will never hurt her again. And if I do, you have my permission to destroy me." "I won't need your permission," Maggie said, but there was the ghost of a smile on her lips. Christmas Day passed in a blur of pancakes and laughter, and 2 children who couldn't stop smiling at each other. For the first time in 26 months, Mikey ate 3 full meals. He showed Claire every room in the mansion. They built a blanket fort in the library. They watched Christmas movies in the home theater. And Thomas watched his son come back to life, bit by bit, hour by hour, all because of a little girl with a too big heart and courage that shamed every adult in the room. Word count 1-800. The fragile peace lasted exactly 7 days. On January 2nd, Detective Sarah Mills arrived at the Brennan estate with news that would shatter everything Thomas thought he'd fixed. She was a serious woman in her mid-40s, her face etched with the kind of weariness that came from seeing humanity's worst. Thomas met her in his study, assuming this was about the viral video, perhaps some legal formality. He was catastrophically wrong. "Mr. Brennan, we need to discuss the bridge incident." Detective Mills set her tablet on his desk. "City engineers inspected the structure after your son's accident. They found something disturbing." Thomas leaned forward. "Disturbing how?" "The bridge didn't collapse due to age or weather." She pulled up photographs on her tablet. "Someone deliberately sabotaged it. Look here. Saw marks on the main support beam, partially cut through. This was intentional." The room tilted. Thomas gripped the edge of his desk. "Intentional?" Someone set a trap, Mr. Brennan. The bridge was weakened precisely enough to collapse under weight, but not immediately. This was calculated. Detective Mills swiped to the next image. We have surveillance footage from the park dated December 13th, 2 days before the incident. A man in dark clothing working on the bridge at 11 p.m. Thomas watched the grainy footage. A figure with a pronounced limp sawed through wood in the darkness, methodical and deliberate. The camera angle was too far for facial identification, but something about the gait triggered recognition in Thomas's memory. "Do you know who this might be?" Detective Mills asked. Thomas's mind raced through threats, lawsuits, business enemies. Then it clicked. Derek Hale. Who? A former business partner. I sued him 3 years ago for fraud. The judgment was $4 million. It bankrupted him. Thomas pulled up files on his computer. He sent threatening letters afterward. I have them somewhere. My security team flagged them, but I didn't think he'd actually... Detective Mills' expression darkened. Do you have a recent photo? Thomas found one from court documents. Derek Hale, 38, had been a promising entrepreneur before his scheme to embezzle company funds collapsed. The lawsuit had destroyed his marriage, his reputation, his future. In the photo, he stood outside the courthouse, hatred burning in his eyes. He walks with a limp, Thomas said, his voice hollow. Injured his leg in a car accident 2 years ago. That matches our suspect. Detective Mills made notes. Mr. Brennan, we believe this was a kidnapping attempt. The plan appears to have been weaken the bridge, wait for your son to cross, let him fall into the water, then extract him for ransom. Claire Morgan's intervention disrupted everything. The implication crashed over Thomas like a wave. Claire hadn't just saved Mikey from a fall. She'd saved him from being taken, held for ransom, possibly hurt or killed when Thomas inevitably involved the police. Where is he now? Thomas's voice came out strangled. Unknown. We have a warrant for his arrest, but Derek fled. His apartment was abandoned 3 days ago. However, Detective Mills hesitated. There's more. We found a notebook in his car which was discovered abandoned near your estate. Inside were detailed observations of your son and of Claire Morgan. Thomas felt his blood turn to ice. Claire? Dates, times, routines. He'd been watching her daily letter deliveries. The last entry was dated January 1st. It says, and I quote, "The girl ruined everything. She'll pay for interfering." No. Thomas stood so abruptly his chair toppled. No, no, no. She's just a child. Where is she now? We've assigned protection to the Pinewood Apartments. Officer Martinez is outside their building as we speak. But Mr. Brennan, I'm recommending we move both families to a secure location until Derek is apprehended. Thomas was already calling Frank. Get Mikey to the safe room now. Don't tell him why, just do it. Then to Detective Mills. I'm bringing them here. Claire and her mother. Whatever it takes to keep them safe. That's probably wise. We'll coordinate security. An alert sounded on Detective Mills' radio. Her face paled as she listened. Derek was just spotted near Pinewood Apartments. Units are responding. Thomas ran. He took the mountain road at speeds that would have gotten him arrested on any other day. His phone rang continuously. Frank, his security team, Dr. Chen, but he ignored them all. The only thing that mattered was getting to Claire before Derek did. At Pinewood Apartments, chaos had erupted. Police cars blocked the street, lights flashing. Officers were evacuating the building. Thomas abandoned his Tesla in the middle of the road and sprinted toward the entrance. Officer Martinez stopped him. Mr. Brennan, you can't... Where is she? Where's Claire? 4th floor? We're bringing them down now. Derek was seen in the alley 10 minutes ago, but we lost him in... A scream cut through the air. Female, adult, terrified. Maggie. Thomas shoved past Martinez and took the stairs 3 at a time. 4th floor. Apartment 4C. The door stood open. Inside, Maggie stood with her back against the wall, clutching Claire behind her. In the doorway stood Derek Hale, disheveled and wild-eyed, a knife trembling in his hand. "You," Derek spat when he saw Thomas. "You destroyed my life. You took everything from me. My company, my wife, my future, everything. Derek, put the knife down." Thomas kept his voice level despite the terror clawing at his throat. "This isn't the way." "Isn't it?" Derek's laugh was unhinged. "You know what it's like to lose everything. I'm going to show you. That little brat." He gestured at Claire with the knife. "She cost me $4 million. She ruined my plan. So I'm taking her. Let's see how you like negotiating for someone you care about." Behind Maggie, Claire was crying silently, her small body shaking. But when she saw Thomas, something flickered in her eyes, not fear, trust. "You don't care about her," Derek continued. "She's nobody to you, just some poor kid you felt guilty about. So here's what's going to happen." "You're right," Thomas interrupted. "I didn't care about her. 2 weeks ago she was nobody to me." Maggie's face registered shock and betrayal. Claire's eyes widened. "But then she saved my son's life. Twice, actually. Once from a bridge you sabotaged, and once from me." Thomas took a careful step forward. "She showed me what real courage looks like, what real kindness looks like. And now she's not nobody, Derek. She's family. Which means if you hurt her, I will spend every dollar I have, every connection I've built, every resource at my disposal to make sure you never see daylight again." Brave words for a man whose son is helpless. Derek's eyes gleamed with malice. "How is little Mikey? Still in that wheelchair? Still useless?" The calculated cruelty, designed to provoke, instead crystallized Thomas's focus. Derek wanted him angry, reckless. Instead, Thomas became cold and strategic. "Officer Martinez," Thomas called without taking his eyes off Derek. "I know you're in the hallway. I need you to listen carefully. Derek Hale is currently threatening Claire Morgan with a deadly weapon. That gives you legal authority to use necessary force." Derek's eyes darted to the door. In that half-second of distraction, Thomas lunged. He wasn't a young man, wasn't particularly athletic, but desperation and protective fury gave him strength he didn't know he possessed. He tackled Derek into the hallway, both men crashing into the opposite wall. The knife clattered to the floor. Martinez and 2 other officers swarmed in, pulling Derek away, forcing him to the ground. Thomas heard the click of handcuffs, Derek's screams of rage and threats of lawsuits and revenge. But all Thomas could focus on was Claire. She stood in the doorway of her apartment, Maggie's arms wrapped around her, both of them trembling. Claire's face was streaked with tears, her eyes huge with shock. Thomas crossed to them and dropped to his knees. "Are you okay? Did he hurt you?" Claire shook her head mutely. "I'm so sorry." Thomas's voice broke. "This is my fault. All of it. The bridge, the danger, everything. Derek targeted you because of me, because you saved Mikey, and I—" He couldn't finish. The guilt was suffocating. Maggie's face was pale, but her voice was steel. "We need to leave, now. Pack what you can carry, Claire." "Wait." Thomas stood. "Please." "Come to the estate, just until Derek is processed and we know you're safe. I have security, safe rooms, everything you need. Your security is why my daughter almost got kidnapped." Maggie's composure cracked. "You brought this danger into our lives." "I know. You're right, but please." Thomas's voice shook. "Don't make decisions out of fear. That's what I did, and it almost destroyed my son. Let me help you." Not because I'm trying to control you or buy you, but because Claire saved Mikey, and I owe her a debt I can never repay. Let me at least keep her safe." Maggie looked at her daughter. Claire was silent, processing trauma too big for an 8-year-old mind. Detective Mills appeared in the doorway. "We have Derek in custody. He's being transported to county jail, held without bail on multiple charges including attempted kidnapping, assault, and criminal conspiracy. But Miss Morgan, I strongly recommend you accept Mr. Brennan's offer. Derek had accomplices we haven't identified yet. You're not safe here." The apartment suddenly felt even smaller, more exposed. The thin walls that had been home now felt like paper barriers against violence. "Mama?" Claire's voice was tiny. "Can we check on Mikey? I'm scared for him too." The simple request, thinking of someone else even in her own trauma, decided it. "We'll come," Maggie said, "but temporary, just until this is resolved." They packed quickly: clothes, toiletries, Claire's few precious possessions, including her father's firefighter badge. The wooden squirrel Thomas had seen Mikey clutching went into Claire's backpack. As they descended the stairs, police still securing the scene, Claire slipped her small hand into Thomas's larger one. "Thank you for protecting us," she whispered. Thomas looked down at this child who'd been terrorized because of his past, who'd nearly been taken because she'd shown kindness to his son, and felt something shift fundamentally in his chest. "Always," he promised. "From now on, always." At the estate, Mikey waited by the front door, Frank having told him only that Claire was coming to stay for a while. When he saw her face, pale and shocked, he knew immediately something was wrong. "What happened?" Claire tried to smile, tried to be brave, but the facade crumbled. She crossed to Mikey's wheelchair and collapsed beside it, her head on his lap, and cried with the force of delayed terror finally releasing. Mikey stroked her hair with trembling hands, looking desperately at his father for explanation. Thomas knelt beside both children. "Someone tried to hurt Claire, because she saved you, but he's in jail now, and she's safe here with us." Mikey's face went through shock, horror, guilt, and finally determination. "Then she stays, forever if she wants. Right, Dad?" "Right," Thomas agreed, "for as long as she needs." That night Claire couldn't sleep alone. Maggie found her and Mikey in his room, both children in his bed, holding hands, Kate's scarf wrapped around both of them. Mikey's breathing was even, the first peaceful sleep he'd had in months. Claire's eyes were open, staring at the ceiling. "Baby," Maggie whispered, "you okay?" "Mama, that man wanted to hurt me because I helped Mikey. Does that mean I shouldn't help people?" The question pierced Maggie's heart. "No, sweetheart. It means the world has broken people in it, but that doesn't mean you stop being kind. Your daddy ran into a burning building knowing he might die. He did it anyway. You know why? Because it was right. Because love is always worth the risk." Maggie kissed her daughter's forehead. "Sleep now. You're safe." But as Maggie left the room, she wondered if safety was even possible anymore. Thomas Brennan's world had consumed them, and she didn't know if they'd survive it. Word count, 1,500. 3 months later, spring arrived in Aspen with the gentleness of a promise kept. The winter that had nearly destroyed them had given way to something none of them had dared hope for. Healing. Not the kind that erased scars, but the kind that transformed them into testimony. March 25th marked the grand opening of Kate's house, and the day began with Thomas standing in front of a mirror, adjusting his tie with hands that no longer shook. Behind him in the reflection, he could see into the hallway where 2 voices drifted up from downstairs, Mikey and Claire, arguing cheerfully about whether to put the red or blue ribbon on the ceremonial scissors. "Red matches the logo," Claire insisted. "But blue was Mom's favorite color," Mikey countered. Then we use both, obviously. The compromise came from Maggie, her voice warm with the kind of exasperated affection that came from 3 months of watching these two children become inseparable. Thomas smiled. The sound of that daily bickering had become his favorite music. So much had changed. Derek Hale was awaiting trial, facing 20 years minimum. His accomplices had been identified and arrested. The threat was over, but its impact had reshaped all of them. Maggie had accepted the estate manager position, and she and Claire now lived in the guest wing that had been converted into a comfortable suite. It wasn't charity. Maggie had proven herself invaluable, bringing order and warmth to a house that had forgotten both. The staff, who'd moved through the mansion like ghosts for 2 years, now smiled and laughed. The change, Frank said, was nothing short of miraculous. Claire had enrolled in the same school as Mikey would attend in the fall. Public school, with accommodations for Mikey's wheelchair. Thomas had fought every protective instinct, every paranoid fear, and signed the enrollment papers with Maggie's hand on his shoulder for support. "You're doing the right thing," she'd said. "Kate would be proud." And Mikey had undergone the spinal surgery on February 20th. The 6-hour procedure had been the longest of Thomas's life, spent in a waiting room with Maggie, Claire, Frank, Officer Martinez, and even Mrs. Ruth, the elderly neighbor whose viral video had started everything. Dr. Patterson had emerged with cautious optimism. The surgery was successful. With extensive physical therapy, there's a 70% chance he'll walk with assistance within a year. Claire had cried harder than anyone, her small body shaking with relief. The months of rehabilitation had been grueling, days when Mikey screamed in pain and frustration, days when he wanted to quit, when the walker felt impossible, when hope seemed like a cruel joke. But Claire had been there for every session, cheering him on, making him laugh when he wanted to cry, holding his hand when the pain was worst. "Remember the bridge?" she'd say when he faltered. "You didn't give up then. Don't give up now." And he hadn't. 2 weeks ago, Mikey had taken his first unassisted steps, 3 of them with leg braces and a walking stick, but his own power propelling him forward. The video of that moment, Claire jumping and screaming with joy, Thomas openly weeping, Maggie filming with shaking hands, had gone viral for all the right reasons. The same internet that had condemned Thomas now celebrated him, not for his wealth but for his transformation, for admitting he was wrong, for changing. Now, as Thomas descended the stairs to where his makeshift family waited, he felt something he hadn't experienced in 3 years: peace. "Dad!" Mikey stood at the bottom of the stairs, balanced on his walking stick, grinning up at him. "We decided on both ribbons. Claire says it's symbolic." "Symbolic of what?" Thomas reached the bottom and ruffled his son's hair. "Red for courage, blue for remembrance," Claire explained seriously. She wore a new dress, the first one purchased specifically for her rather than from a thrift store. It was simple but fit her perfectly, and she stood a little taller in it. "We're being brave like Mrs. Kate would want, but we're remembering her too." The casual way she said Mrs. Kate made Thomas's throat tighten. Claire had never met his wife, but she spoke of her like a beloved aunt, incorporating her memory into their daily life with a child's easy acceptance of love spanning beyond death. "That's perfect," Thomas managed. The drive to Kate's house took 20 minutes. The building had once been a vacant office complex on the edge of town. Thomas had purchased it in January and spent 3 months converting it into something Kate would have loved: a community center offering free after-school care, tutoring, meals, and support services for low-income families. Maggie had been appointed executive director. Her first act had been hiring Mrs. Ruth as volunteer coordinator, giving the lonely elderly woman purpose and community. Her second had been partnering with Dr. Chen to provide free medical clinics twice weekly. The center was designed to be fully accessible, with ramps, wide doorways, and adaptive equipment for children with disabilities. In the main hall hung a large portrait of Kate, painted from Thomas's favorite photograph, her at the park with Mikey, both of them laughing, both alive and whole. Below the portrait, a plaque read, "Kate's House, where every child matters, every family belongs, and kindness changes everything." 200 people had gathered for the opening. Families who needed the services, donors who'd contributed, local officials who'd supported the permits, media too, but Thomas had learned to use publicity for good rather than fear it. Mikey, using his walking stick and leg braces, made his way slowly to the ribbon with Claire beside him, steadying him when he wobbled. The crowd erupted in applause at the sight, not pity but genuine celebration of courage. The mayor spoke about community and compassion. Dr. Chen spoke about health equity. Mrs. Ruth, her voice shaking with emotion, spoke about the loneliness epidemic among elderly people and how Kate's House would include intergenerational programs. Then Thomas stepped to the microphone. 3 months ago, I was a different man. A broken man who thought protecting my son meant building walls around him. I was wrong about almost everything. His voice carried across the crowd, steady and honest. A little girl with a big heart showed me that walls don't protect us. Love does, connection does, community does. He gestured to Claire, who ducked her head shyly. Claire Morgan saved my son's life twice. Once from a bridge that had been sabotaged, and once from me, from my fear and isolation and inability to see past my own pain. The crowd listened in absolute silence. My wife, Kate, believed in living fully and giving freely. This center is her dream, finally realized. But it's also Claire's dream, a world where kindness isn't rare, where helping each other is natural, where we see the humanity in everyone regardless of wealth or circumstance. Thomas paused, looking at Mikey and Claire standing together, his son leaning slightly on his friend for support. These two children taught me that true wealth isn't measured in bank accounts. It's measured in moments like these, in second chances and forgiveness and families formed not by blood, but by choice. Maggie stood to the side, tears streaming down her face. Officer Martinez, who'd been invited as a guest of honor for his role in protecting the children, wiped his eyes unashamedly. Even Frank, proper English butler to his core, had to dab at his face with a handkerchief. "So, thank you," Thomas concluded. "Thank you to everyone who supported this vision. Thank you to the families who will use these services. You honor us by trusting us with your children. And thank you, Claire and Mikey, for showing us all what friendship really means." The applause was thunderous. Mikey and Claire cut the ribbon together, both sets of small hands on the oversized scissors. The ribbon fell away, and Kate's house officially opened. Inside, children immediately swarmed the activity rooms, the library, the playground, visible through large windows. Parents, some with tears of relief, signed their children up for programs that would ease their impossible schedules and impossible burdens. An elderly man approached Thomas, thin and frail. "Mr. Brennan, I'm Edward Hale, Derek's father." Thomas tensed immediately, but the old man raised a shaking hand. "Please." "I just wanted to say I'm sorry for what my son did, and to thank you." "Thank me?" "You visited him in jail. You offered to help with his rehabilitation instead of pursuing additional civil suits. You showed him mercy when you had every right to destroy him." Edward's eyes filled. "He's getting help now. Real help. He wrote me a letter, first contact in 2 years. He said you made him realize hate was destroying him faster than any bankruptcy could." Thomas hadn't publicized the jail visit or the offer. It had been private, between him and a man who'd let bitterness poison his soul. Thomas had seen too much of himself in Derek not to try. "Everyone deserves a chance to change," Thomas said quietly. "I got mine. Why shouldn't he?" Edward gripped his hand. You're a good man." "Thank you." After the old man left, Claire appeared at Thomas's elbow. "That was nice, what you did for the bad man." "He's not bad, sweetheart. He's hurt." "There's a difference. That's what Mama says about you, that you weren't bad when you yelled at me, just hurt and scared." Thomas knelt down to her level, this child who'd transformed his life. "Your Mama is very wise and very generous to forgive me. She says forgiveness isn't for the person who hurt you, it's for you, so you don't carry the hurt forever." Claire cocked her head. "Do you think Mrs. Kate forgives you for the walls?" The question, asked with such innocent directness, pierced straight to Thomas's core. "I hope so. I read her diary. She wrote me a letter telling me to let Mikey live. I'm trying my best to honor that. I think she sees you trying, and I think she sent me to help." Claire said it with absolute certainty. "Because the bridge breaking right when Mikey was there and me being there right then too, that's too many coincidences. That's like magic. Or angels." Thomas pulled her into a hug. "Then I'm grateful to whatever angels sent you. You saved my whole family." The day passed in a blur of tours and thank yous, and watching Mikey play with other children for the first time in his memory. He fell twice, picked himself up both times with Claire's help, laughing instead of crying. As sunset painted the sky gold and pink, the four of them, Thomas, Mikey, Claire, and Maggie, stood outside Kate's house watching families depart. "She would have loved this," Thomas said softly, looking at Kate's portrait visible through the window. "She does love it," Mikey said with certainty. "She's watching. I can feel it." Claire slipped her hand into Thomas's on one side and Mikey's on the other, creating a chain. Maggie completed the circle, taking Thomas's other hand and Mikey's. They stood like that as the sun set, four people who'd been strangers 3 months ago, now bound by something stronger than blood. That night, back at the estate, Thomas tucked Mikey into bed, a ritual he'd reclaimed from nurses and staff. Mikey's room was different now, filled with photos of friends, artwork from Claire, ribbons from physical therapy milestones. "Dad?" Mikey's voice was sleepy. "Are we happy now?" Thomas considered the question seriously. "Yes, buddy, I think we are." "Good, because I was really tired of being sad." "Me too." "Dad, one more thing. Anything. Can we make Claire officially our family, like adopt her or something?" Thomas smiled. "She and Maggie are their own family, son, but they're part of ours too now. That's pretty special." "The best family," Mikey yawned. "The one you choose." After Mikey fell asleep, Thomas found Maggie in the kitchen making tea. They'd developed this routine, late-night conversations after the children slept, processing the miracle of their joined lives. "He asked about adopting Claire," Thomas said, accepting the mug she offered. Maggie laughed softly. "Claire asked me if you could be her bonus dad. She said she has a dad in heaven and now one on earth, too." They sat in comfortable silence, sipping tea, watching snow beginning to fall outside, the last snow of winter giving way to spring. "Thank you," Thomas said finally, "for giving me a second chance, for trusting me with Claire, for helping me learn how to be human again." "Thank you for giving my daughter a childhood," Maggie replied, "for letting her be just a kid instead of my little adult, for giving us both security and family. We saved each other, I think." "Yeah," Maggie agreed. "I think we did." Outside, the first stars appeared. Somewhere up there, Thomas imagined Kate watching, finally at peace, knowing her boys, both of them now, were learning to live again. And in the morning, the sun would rise on a world that felt less broken, less scary, less impossible. All because a little girl with a too small coat and an enormous heart had refused to walk past a boy in danger. All because kindness, in the end, had changed everything. Word count 1,650. The end. Sometimes the walls we build to protect the ones we love become the very prisons that trap them. Thomas Brennan thought wealth could shield his son from pain, that control equaled safety, that isolation meant protection. But it took an 8-year-old girl with nothing but a brave heart to show him the truth. Real security doesn't come from locked gates and careful distance. It comes from connection, from letting people in, from choosing love over fear. How many of us have pushed away the very things that could heal us because we were terrified of being hurt again? How many second chances have we missed because pride convinced us we were protecting ourselves? This story reminds us that it's never too late to tear down those walls, to apologize for the harm our fear has caused, to choose vulnerability over safety. The most profound transformations often come from the smallest acts of courage. A child helping a stranger, a parent admitting they were wrong, a community choosing compassion over judgment. What walls have you built in your own life that might be keeping out the very blessings you need? Have you ever received forgiveness you didn't deserve? And how did it change you? Share your thoughts below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.